hasn't happened.
So from a directional approach, do you take the direction, like I know when I sit next to Senator Eric Adams on the floor, who used to be a police officer for many years, and he's chair of our Senate Committee on Homeland Security. So when we talk about security, he often talks about protecting us from a threat. And so the whole idea is to protect something so that something doesn't happen, as opposed to chasing criminals once a crime has committed. Is that the same approach that you take?
Absolutely.
All right, so you really are kind of focused on making sure that if someone does attack us or does try to hack into our systems, that they're unsuccessful in that, as opposed to being able to catch them in the act of doing it.
Yeah, and we do the latter as well if we need to. But really the mission of the agency is to protect, detect, respond, and recover if necessary. And how we do the protect and detect is that we have an operational center. It is 7 by 24. It's staffed 365 days a year. We monitor malicious traffic at core segments of the state's network.
So describe to us what malicious traffic is.
Malicious traffic is, I think everybody now has been familiar with the words viruses and worms and cyber attacks. You even hear cyber warfare now. But a virus or a worm, or it could be other malware. Malware meaning malicious software. So malware is just the combination of those two. That they're traditionally, those viruses and worms have certain characteristics. Once the companies, the antivirus companies, identify what those characteristics are, they build a signature. It's just like a thumbprint, the way we do our police activities in the physical arena. In DNA now, you leave certain characteristics at scenes, and you can match that. So if I ran my fingerprints, when I got hired, my fingerprints were taken, they ran it against the database. Luckily, there were no matches, so therefore I was hired. But, if there was a match, then I wouldn't have gotten the job. We do the same thing with the cyber arena. We're looking for signatures. If we find a signature, then we can prevent that from being, impacting the state's networks. I can tell you right now that we are looking at, and I'll say the number, and then I'll tell you that it's because of more than just New York State. We're looking at approximately 6 billion logs a month. Wow. That's a month. That's how much noise there is out there. So we need to distill that noise down to something that's actionable, because you get overwhelmed. Right. And by that 6 billion logs, some of it's false positive. So as we're looking for traffic, what happens is there are devices out on the networks, and they just look for malicious traffic. And if they find malicious traffic, or they think they do, a red flag goes up basically, and they notify us. And then we have codes, we have analysts that look at that and say, was that really malicious traffic, or wasn't it malicious traffic? And if it was, then we take action. So that 6 billion logs really represents more than just New York State. When I started earlier saying that it's about collaboration and cooperation, the other fundamental principle is that this is about the collective view is much more powerful than the singular view. So we also, under contract, we provide the same services to Alaska, to Montana, to the state of Georgia, to part of New York City, soon to part of Los Angeles, and we're getting our first major airport and our first electrical independent system operators under our belt as well. So all of that data now helps all of us, because if something's happening in Alaska that has not yet hit New York, I can help New York prevent that occurring, because I've had that opportunity to see what's happening in Alaska.
Okay, in the middle of a fiscal crisis, the legislative wants to know, so are we contracting a fee for these services?
Yes, we are. Okay. Absolutely.
Good. So
I'm a revenue person.
There you go. So you're producing a net revenue for the state.
I don't know if it's net, but definitely a revenue. And there's definitely a benefit, because, again, that collective view, we have been able to see things that we would have been blinded by, but for the fact that we have these relationships with other entities.
Excellent. So what are some of the day-to-day activities that, both you as a director and maybe some of your analysts are involved in every day?
And it's a fascinating office, and I would love to have you come over and see our operational center, because
soon.
I would really look forward to that. It's never the same every day. As I was saying, that these cyber attacks, the cyber arena has changed, it's morphed. Since just 2002 to 2009, the difference of what and how I did my job has changed dramatically. When I started this, first thing that I did was, okay, I want to protect the perimeter, just like you would do at your home. People know readily how to protect their house from burglars. You know, you make sure you have locks on your doors and on your windows. Some people have alarm systems into their houses. Some even have animals that they, you know, to help protect their property. We did that in New York. You know, very quickly we deployed perimeter checks. So those firewalls that agencies deploy, antivirus, other mechanisms, it's all about layers. This is never one layer deep. It can't be, because any hacker can break at least one layer. So we have multiple layers of this security. So we would put devices out on our perimeter because I knew what that perimeter was. It was very well defined. However, with problems with, and I love my BlackBerry, don't get me wrong, it's, you know, it's, it doesn't go far from me. But the challenges that this has given, at least the security arena, has been that I used to protect the perimeter. Now with mobile devices and wireless, I need to protect you. I need to protect the individual, because it's the individual now carries his data or her data with them all the time. Right. So how do I protect that? So I had to change the strategy and how we looked for attacks that are coming in. So it's gone from just a signature-based approach, which is that detecting of code and malware and malicious activities that's already been predefined, to also one of behavior. You know, how do I change the behavior? How do I make this a second nature of buckling a seatbelt? Because if you don't have it in your mind that you are secure and that you're responsible for your own security, you are when you talk about your physical. Right. But when you start talking about cyber, I've got to instill that into everybody. BlackBerries, every BlackBerry comes with the ability to have a password. I am shocked by how many people do not have passwords on their BlackBerries. I know in New York State we require that. I won't ask the question. And the reason is that thousands and thousands of these devices are just lost, not even stolen. Lost. They leave them in cabs, for example. Right. You know, when I used to go to New York, which I come to New York all the time, I used to get out of a cab. You know, I'm from Albany, so, you know, the little kid coming up to the big city. I would always grab my wallet as I got out of the cab to make sure, you know, that I had my wallet with me. Now I have my one hand here and one hand here on my BlackBerry to make sure my BlackBerry. I look very strange, but I feel very secure in doing that. Cell phones. I do presentations, and before I start, I can do a discovery mode because I can look for open access, people broadcasting. By that means that if you don't have certain security settings, you're basically telling people, especially with using Bluetooth, which is the device that people talk with, you know, to your headset, to your mobile device. There's codes in that as well, and if you don't change them, there's generally just two sets that come predetermined. So I know what both of those are, which I'm not going to say. Right. But by knowing both of those, that means I have the opportunity to pairing with your device and listening to your conversations. I can even make calls from your cell phone without you knowing it. Wow. And it used to be that proximity, because that Bluetooth was very short-ranged, so therefore people didn't get too nervous by that. With very simple changes to my devices, that can go a long, long distance. And I think someone said maybe up to a mile, but I'd have to check that. So I could be far enough away and still tap into your cell phone. Wow. So, and think about what you do on your cell phone. Think about the information that you now contain on all of that.
Yeah, operational security is a big deal for, you know, for a lot of agencies, a lot of elected officials. You know, I think I'm going to have you come in and do a presentation for my colleagues.
I would love to.
I don't think a lot of us are as in tune to these things about our own individual offices as well as our own personal devices and how we're operating. Lot to know. There
are, from the home user perspective, I think, you know, if I sat back and said, what keeps me up at night, there's lots of things that keeps me up at night. And there's some that different from government perspective than there is from a home user perspective. But from home users, I really think that there are four major areas of concern. And one I think that is probably near and dear to you, because I know you have legislation that you have sponsored out there on data protection and data theft, and what happens when people get compromised. And it's happening way too often. Sadly, since the reporting requirements have started coming in 2005, there have been 250 million breaches nationally, and those are the ones that have been reported. So just think about how many that yet have not been reported. Because sadly, not everybody reports. Some people don't know they've been breached, so they don't know that they have to report. 250 million cases where records have been accessed or potentially accessed because the data is either lost, stolen, or like we call leaked.